Hi, we're here today to look at chapter 13 of the Tao Te Ching. And chapter 13 is interesting. Some chapters are very interesting to translate. And in fact, if you get several different translations of the Tao side by side, you will see some differences in how chapter 13 is translated. It's one that's a little bit difficult to figure out looking at the Chinese characters. So first, I'm going to share my translation of chapter 13. Then we're going to look a little bit at how it was translated and how someone else translated it. And then I'm going to share a little teaching about what I really feel chapter 13 means. So first, let me read chapter 13 to you. I titled it, The Qualification for Leadership. To be held in high regard frightens us. Likewise, we fear disgrace. But the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self. Why do I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us? If we are held in high regard, we could fall into disgrace. Therefore, being in high regard frightens us, because losing high regard frightens us. That's why I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us. Why do I say the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self? The reason we have trouble is because we think we are the personal self. If we do not see ourselves as the personal self, what trouble is there? Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves are fit to be leaders in the world. Those who love everyone as much as they love themselves can be entrusted with the world. So I will share my screen and we'll start looking at this translation. So the very first line, favor disgrace as frightened. And of course, I said to be held in, instead of favor, I used high regard. To be held in high regard frightens us. Likewise, we fear disgrace, right? Favor disgrace as frightened. Now, expensive here means overvalue. So expensive, if we overvalue, there's big suffer trouble as oneself personally. You can see why people had trouble translating this. Expensive, big, suffer trouble as oneself personally. And in fact, before I go any further, why don't we go ahead and look at this particular character that I translated as oneself personally, because people translated it differently. And based on how they translated it, it really kind of sometimes appears to change the meaning of the chapter. So this is that character, which I've put in the dictionary. And you'll notice that the word could mean body. It could mean life. It could mean oneself. It could mean personally, and it goes on from there. But when I looked at these first four words together, body, life, oneself, personally, I really saw this as the individual self or the egoic self, the belief that I am this separate person. I really think that's what Lao Tzu was talking about here. So I chose oneself / personally to represent that. But if we go back to the translation, you'll notice I said, but the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self. Right? That's really what I think Lao Tzu was getting at. And in fact, that fits very, very well with the rest of the Tao Te Ching, where we are frequently encouraged to let go of self-will, right? The biggest trouble is overvaluing me. When I overvalue me, this causes all kinds of trouble. This causes all kinds of suffering, both for myself and others. So the expensive big suffer trouble is overvaluing oneself personally. But the biggest trouble is overvaluing, that's the expensive, the personal self. Why say favor disgrace as frightened, which I translated as why do I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us? Well, these Chinese characters mean favor, become, this last character right here could be down or it could be below. Favor becomes down or favor becomes below. I translated that if we are held in high regard, we could fall into disgrace. And I think this is something that we are either consciously or subconsciously aware of all of the time, which causes us a lot of stress. I think this is what stress really is. Stress is believing that at any moment, whatever success I have, right, whatever's going well for me, right, it could be lost. That's really the cause of stress. So if we are held in high regard, if people see us as successful, if people see us as smart, if people see us as responsible, et cetera, at any moment, I could make that fatal mistake that's going to cause everybody to see me differently. I could fall into disgrace. So why do I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us? If we are held in high regard, we could fall into disgrace. Therefore, get of, I believe that meant get the favor or get the high regard as frightened. Therefore, being in high regard frightens us because we have either a conscious or a subconscious belief that we could fall at any time. Get of as frightened, also lose of as frightened, because losing high regard frightens us, right? If we get it, we're frightened because we're afraid of losing it. Therefore, being in high regard frightens us because losing high regard frightens us. Is say favor disgrace as frightened. That's why I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us. Now let's look at the second part. Why say expensive big suffer trouble as oneself personally? Why do I say the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self? My reason why is big suffer trouble, one who, in other words, this is saying my reason is this, one who suffers because of is oneself. One who suffers because that one believes they are the personal self. The reason we have trouble is because we think we are the personal self, is how I translated that. My reason why is big suffer trouble, one who suffers because of is oneself personally, because that one thinks they are a self. The reason we have trouble is because we think we are the personal self. Now, this one is interesting. Lao Tzu is referring to himself here. And I know oneself personally. I don't think I'm a personal self, Lao Tzu is saying. And he's saying, I have what suffer trouble? Whoops, that's supposed to be a question mark. I have what suffer trouble? So really the correct translation of this would be Lao Tzu speaking, I do not see myself as a personal self, or I do not believe I am a personal self. What trouble do I have, right? But for some reason, when I translated, the way it came in was more of a we, because what Lao Tzu is saying about himself really applies to all of us. This isn't about Lao Tzu. This is about all of us. So the way it came in when I translated it is, if we do not see ourselves as the personal self, what trouble is there? In other words, we can all share in Lao Tzu's experience of, I do not see myself as a personal self. What trouble do I have, right? Which is the more correct translation of that line. Therefore, expensive, one who values, do oneself personally, one who does this action of valuing oneself in the same way that they value the whole world. Therefore, expensive, do oneself personally as the whole world, the same as the whole world. Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves is the way I translated it. But I also could have translated it, therefore, those who value themselves as much as they value the whole world. I didn't think that would make the point as clearly. This is similar to Jesus saying, love your neighbor as yourself, right? The love of self, the caring of self, the concern for self, is the same as the love for neighbor, the caring for neighbor, the concern for neighbor. In other words, no more looking out for number one. We're all number one, right? We're all number one. So therefore, expensive value, do this, do value oneself personally the same as the whole world. Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves, as can depend, rely on the whole world. This really means the whole world can depend on them. So I said, are fit to be leaders in the world. Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves are fit to be leaders in the world. Love, do love your oneself personally, the same as the whole world. Those who love everyone as much as they love themselves, as can entrusted with the whole world, can be entrusted with the world. So let's just look briefly at someone else's translation of this. Now, if I pulled up 10 translations, we would see a lot of differences. So I'm not going to do that. But if you're interested, go and find as many translations of chapter 13 as you can and read them. You'll see some differences. I just want to do one other. And I picked this one by Jeff Pepper and Xiao Hui Wang because they also do a word for word. And I thought it would give us the opportunity to look at their word for word. So let me read their chapter 13. Favor and humiliation are both frightening. Pay attention to risk as you would to your own body. See, that's very different from how I translated it. Favor and humiliation are both frightening. That line is similar. Pay attention to risk as you would to your own body. That's very different. Why do we say favor and humiliation are both frightening? Favor makes you inferior. That's different than how I translated it. You fear getting it and fear losing it. Now that's the same. This is the meaning of favor and humiliation are both frightening. Why do we say pay attention to risk as you would to your own body? And that question is very different than the question I had, but underneath is very similar. Listen, I suffer because I have a body. If I have no body, how can I suffer? I said personal self, right? So very, very similar there. Except they say, they have Lao Tzu speaking, saying, I suffer because I have a body. If I have no body, how can I suffer? And the way I saw it was Lao Tzu was saying, I don't see myself with a personal self. And what trouble do I have, right? So see, there's some differences here. And again, if you get several chapters of, several translations of chapter 13 side by side, you will see some differences. It was a challenging chapter to translate. Here's how they ended. If you can treat the world like your own body, take it, meaning take the world. If you can love the world like your own body, rule it. And one thing they say in their word for word, they have a footnote to this very last line where it says, rule it is literally, I trust you to take care of it, right? Which is how I translate it. They can be entrusted with the world. So there's some similarities and there's some differences. I'm actually quite comfortable with my translation of this chapter. I'm not as comfortable with all of my translations sometimes. For example, the previous chapter we saw could either have a spiritual meaning or could have a more practical meaning. And to be honest, I'm not sure which one Lao Tzu intended. I went with the spiritual meaning of that chapter, but it's just not clear which one is accurate. And, you know, I can't ask Lao Tzu, so I did my best. But in this one, when I really looked at the characters and really contemplated them, I feel quite comfortable with my translation. So let me read it to you one more time. And then I'll do a brief teaching on what this means. To be held in high regard frightens us. Likewise, we fear disgrace. But the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self. Why do I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us? If we are held in high regard, we could fall into disgrace. Therefore, being in high regard frightens us because losing high regard frightens us. That's why I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us. Why do I say the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self? The reason we have trouble is because we think we are the personal self. If we do not see ourselves as the personal self, what trouble is there? Or Lao Tzu could be saying, I do not see myself as a personal self, and what trouble do I have? Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves, a sense of equality there, are fit to be leaders in the world. Those who love everyone as much as they love themselves can be entrusted with the world. So what does this chapter really mean? It means that at either a conscious level or a subconscious level, we all have a belief that we are not good enough. Sometimes people describe that as a feeling of shame. They describe it as a feeling that they are flawed. Some describe it as a feeling that they're a fake. I call it the I am bad belief. I got that from a movie, something about, I think Malkovich is the name. I can't remember. Anyway, I saw a movie where in his subconscious, he was sitting there and he was just saying to himself over and over again, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. And when I saw that movie, I was like, that's it. That's what we all believe. If you aren't conscious of this belief, what you do is you project it out on others. So it's in your subconscious. You don't want to be aware of it because you're so afraid of it, afraid that it's true. And so you project it out onto others. So you may think you're better than everyone else, and they're the ones that are inherently flawed. They're the ones that aren't good enough. So whether you see yourself as in some way not good enough, or whether you see yourself as better than others and they're not as good as you, that's the same subconscious belief, which I call the I am bad belief. So what Lao Tzu is doing here is pointing out the I am bad belief, right? He's saying, when we're in high regard, and of course he's speaking to people who are in high regard, right? They're officials, they're officers. We could even take this to the emperor himself. When we're in high regard, he's saying, that really frightens us. In other words, we feel that stress. We feel that need to perform. We feel like we have to act tough. We have to succeed in our projects, right? We have to, because otherwise we might fall into disgrace. And the problem is, subconsciously, we actually think we deserve that disgrace. That's what we think is the truth about us. And he says, that's why, we fear both high regard and disgrace. But then he says, but the real problem is that you think you're a personal self. Now, listen to this. I told you that I got, from that movie, something about Malkovich, I think. Somebody probably knows what I'm talking about. From that movie, when I was watching him, in his subconscious going, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, that I just borrowed that and I call this I am bad, the I am bad belief. It's not true about any of us, but we all have it, the I am bad belief. Listen to that sentence very carefully. I am bad. Or we could say, I am not good enough. I am a fake. If you don't have the I, you can't have the am bad. I'm not good enough. I'm flawed. I'm a fake. I is what it branches out of. The problem is that when we think we are a personal, individual self, we no longer see ourselves as the whole, as the Tao. There's automatically a feeling of lack in that. I mean, just look at it. Imagine, if you have to imagine, you know yourself as everything, as the Tao. And then for whatever reason, you pop into believing you're just this. It is less than the whole. There is a lack in just being this compared to being everything. So somehow when we adopt the idea that I am this personal self, this less thanness or this lack, this not good enoughness comes with it. That's the real problem. The real problem is overvaluing that I'm me, that I am the number one that has to be watched out for, right? We're all the center of our own little life story. The hero of our dream, I think, is what A Course in Miracles refers to it as. So although we're afraid of disgrace, which is why we are also afraid of high regard, the real problem is the I itself. The real problem is believing I'm an individual person instead of knowing myself as one with the Tao. That's the real problem, is what Lao Tzu is saying. And then, of course, he's saying if we don't see ourselves as this individual self, meaning that we have returned to seeing ourselves as the Tao, then what trouble could there be? There could only be trouble when you see yourself as the little personal self. There can't be trouble if you know that you are moved by the perfection of the Tao, that the Tao is providing you with everything you need all of the time. You can't have any trouble with that knowledge. So listen to this again. To be held in high regard frightens us. Likewise, we fear disgrace. But the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self. Why do I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us? If we are held in high regard, we could fall into disgrace. Therefore, being in high regard frightens us because losing high regard frightens us. That's why I say that both high regard and disgrace frighten us. Why do I say the biggest trouble is overvaluing the personal self. The reason we have trouble is because we think we are the personal self. If we do not see ourselves as the personal self, what trouble is there? And then he talks about what really would make one a great leader. In fact, I named this chapter The Qualification for Leadership. And we want to remember, of course, that this again is written for the emperor's officers and officials. So it's written for leaders, right? So we're constantly going to see that theme throughout the Tao. Therefore, those who value everything as much as they value themselves. In other words, we're seeing everything as equal. We're seeing everything as the Tao, right? The way a Sufi might say it is, everything is God, right? Everything is God. Those who value everything as much as they value themselves are fit to be leaders in the world. Those who love everyone as much as they love themselves, this is what Jesus taught. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Those who love everyone as much as they love themselves can be entrusted with the world. Now, I mentioned this lack that comes in as I'm not good enough, and maybe either conscious or completely repressed and projected subconscious. This week, we're going to do, or until I make the next video. Sometimes I make a video every week. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. So between this video and the next, right? Here's how we're going to practice. First, we're going to be on the lookout for the I am bad belief in whatever way it shows up for you. It could be I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm mean, I'm a fake, I don't clean my house well enough, I'm a slob, whatever. Or if it's really, really repressed, look for noticing that you think you're better than others and that you think they're not good enough. Because that's the same belief, just more deeply repressed. When you see it, we want to remember the real problem isn't the am bad part of the I am bad belief. It's the I. That's what Lao Tzu is telling us is the real problem. So when you see this I am bad belief show up in thought, in whatever way it does, we're going to practice self-inquiry on it. That's what we're going to do. What is self-inquiry? Self-inquiry is questioning the I in the thought. So here's how it works. So let's say I get out of the shower, I catch a glimpse of my aging body in the mirror, and I think, oh my God, I'm so ugly. That's it. That's the I am bad belief. Oh my God, I'm so ugly. So I kind of hold on to that sentence for a moment. I just look at the sentence objectively, not with a lot of belief. Objectively, I look at the sentence. Oh my God, I'm so ugly. Can I see this sentence of thought? Can I see, oh my God, I'm so ugly? Yes, I'm aware of that sentence, right? I'm aware of that sentence. What is the I that's aware of the sentence? And I try to pay attention for that. Now, what I'm looking at is formless. It is not the body, right? It's a formless awareness. And I just want to get a feel for that, even if it only lasts an instant. I want to feel that I am the formless awareness. I'm aware of the body. I'm aware of the thought about the body. But they are objects that I am aware of. What am I? So maybe the I am bad thought shows up like this. Oh my God, if I'm late on this project, they're all going to think I'm an idiot. Oh my God, if I'm late on this project, they're all going to think I'm an idiot. Oh my God, if I'm late on this project, they're all going to think I'm an idiot. Can I see that thought? Yes. What am I? What sees this thought? You can even compare once you get the feeling of what the I is that sees the thought. You can compare the thought, which is pretty close, and the thought feels like it's right here, but the I is back here looking at it. Which one feels more intimately me? Which one stands out a little bit, even though it seems to be about me, right? I seem to be the one that needs to get the project done on time. So it seems to be about me, but truly, when I look at the awareness that sees the thought and I look at the thought, which one is closer or more intimately me? And which one stands out, just out a little bit from me, even though it uses the word I. So that's the practice, self-inquiry on the I am bad belief in whatever way the I am bad belief shows up. And if you wanted to, you could read chapter 13 in the Regina Akers translation a few times and really take that in deeply. All right. See you next time for chapter 14. Bye.